everyone, and welcome back. Today we're talking about Chicken Mate, which is Ali Hazelwood's first YA. That seemed to be a hit or miss with some, but it was definitely a hit for me. So the book starts out with the prologue, where Mallory is sitting in her chemistry class watching an interview with Sawyer that came up after she had finished the video she needed to watch for her class. An interview made her remember how she had gotten her first set on her birthday, which she had loved a lot. And then basically the prologue ends with her putting her phone away, and how she had never again thought about Sawyer for the next 2 years, until she'd basically wiped the floor with him in a chess match. So on to part 1. Now fast forward 2 years, she's getting a drink with her best friend Easton, who also happens to be one person down for upcoming chess match, and is trying to convince her to play with them. But even though she kinda doesn't wanna do it, she remembers that Easton is about to move away for college, and she's staying to take care of her sick mom and siblings, and she wants to use this time to spend it together while they still can. The next day, while she's making breakfast for her siblings, we also learn that her mom is a successful medical writer, but being that she's a freelancer and can't really work now because of her rheumatoid, because of her health problems, and that the dad is gone, though it's not clear yet if he's dead or just left them. And then Easton shows up to pick her up for a tournament, and they're divided into skill level, and Easton had put Mallory to the highest, being that she's the best in their team. Before she goes into her seat, Easton tells her that she put herself in a way too high level and probably would lose really quick, and that if Mal can just lose fast, well, they can run out for a coffee quickly and be back by the next round. When she takes her seat in and is waiting for her opponent, he comes in and sits down in front of her, and surprising to absolutely no one, it turns out to be Nolan Sawyer. They play it very quickly, and he seems to not be paying too much attention to the game, so much so that he doesn't even notice it at first when she wins. And next morning, her sister Darcy wakes her up, telling her that there's someone at the door who wants to see her, and when she goes to check it, it's a woman named Daphne, who's there from a chess team named Zugzwang, I think, and is there to offer her a job, where they basically pay her to play chess for a year. But with everything going on right now, she needs a job that's gonna be there long term, and not just for a year. But she tells her to think about it, and to reach back to her if she changes her mind. And later that day at work, her boss tries to scam a client, but when Mal basically corrects the situation, she ends up getting fired. So now she needs to find a new job, but unfortunately, isn't having much luck. And at the same time, Ethan moves away, and now not having any other choice, she ends up emailing Daphne that she's taking the job. So on to part 2, which is basically the main part of the book. It starts out with her first day at work, and the place is huge and looks pretty nice. She gets her schedule that mostly includes reading about chess. Then she also gets to meet her new office mate, Oz, who I think is gonna be one of my faves in this book, but then I'm also not sure how often he'll appear. So guess what? Basically, he's the only talk to me if you need me to call 911, and even then, try doing it yourself type. That's pretty much his quote, by the way. It also turns out that she had lied to her family about her new job, because I guess there's some family drama with chess and her dad. Anyways, later on when she meets up with her GM, which apparently stands for Grandmaster, who turns out to be Daphne, she tells her about how just reading and not playing seems somewhat pointless. They play a match against each other, and Mal loses because Daphne used a tactic that was basically her playing defense and was basically boring the whole time, until Mal got so bored and frustrated that she started making stupid mistakes, which made her lose. And this was basically to show her that she needs to learn some of the old games, especially because of how long of a break she'd taken from chess. Now fast forward, and Mal, Oz and Def are heading over to Philly for a tournament, and there she wins her matches and moves on to the second rounds that are gonna be the next day. And so therefore that night, there is a gathering at the hotel for those who went on to the next round, but there she can also see some very annoying people who Oz hates. Well, everyone seems to hate them, okay. And also seem to hate Sawyer in their obviously jealous way. And after hanging around there for some time, she comes to a conclusion that she doesn't have much in common with the people there, being that they're all somewhat older. And so she decides to go back to her room, but accidentally ends up in the pool, which decides to take a quick swim while no one's around. But when she comes out of the water, she sees Sawyer standing in front of her, while someone, probably his friends, runs in and jumps into the pool, and she takes the opportunity to run out. The next morning, she goes to the next game that she wins her match against Imai, who is also Nolan's best friend, who had been with him at the pool, and he also seems likely to be a new fave character of mine. And that day, she also gets to the quarterfinals against Coach, the Orsling, and in a pretty tight game manages to win with a draw, which means that she gets to move on to the finals against Nolan. But right before the game's gonna start, the director steps in and apologizes, telling her that she's not gonna play the match due to an error. So it turns out that because of the cat-looking guinea pig on the scorecard, Kosh complained, and therefore against literally everyone's wishes, got to play instead. Nolan told them that he wouldn't play if Mallory didn't, but when Russell, the director, told him that Kosh would then automatically win in that case, He ends up having to play with a handicap by giving coaches 2 moves out, and also wins with embarrassing amount of moves. After the game, someone from BBC comes to talk to her, not for an interview, but just to give some praises. But Rosa intervenes to give her the semi-final prize of $10,000, which she then tries to give to Daphne, but she tells her that the money from the games are her own. So the next day, she gets a day off and decides to spend it studying coach's old games so that she can find a way to beat him. And later, when she gets back from picking her sisters up from school, she sees Nolan standing outside her house waiting for her. But before they can talk, he's bombarded by questions from her sister and then invited to stay for dinner by her mom. And before leaving, they talk outside and he tells her that he came over because he wants to play against her, which she declines. And after Nolan leaves, she goes back to her room and finds Darcy looking up the dive for a school project, and she had come across an article about her game with Nolan, but promises to keep it a secret. And from one of the articles, it shows that her dad was an GM, but had died a year ago. Fast forward some time later at work, Daphne tells her about the chess Olympics, that even though it doesn't really have a cash prize, it's really good for her career and could set her up for future tournaments, but it will be in Toronto and will go on for 5 days in November. So when she tells family to check with her mom and giving her an excuse about the senior center which she told them she worked at, her mom and Darcy are totally fine and happy with her leaving, but Sabrina on the other hand goes on about how selfish it is for her to leave for 5 days while there might be an emergency and they might need her at home. Which kind of gets to her because even though it's still not really clear what had happened, she does seem to think that the situation her family is in is her fault. But the next day, she still accepts to go. And I fast forward again 2 months and it's time for a trip. And at the airport where she's trying to place her bag on the bag rail, Nolan helps her out. And right after, Emil and Tonu, the girl she'd seen with them in previous tournaments, get her, and she seems to be pretty happy seeing Mal and having someone that she can talk to about things other than fantasy football. And at the airplane, Tanu asks her to change seats with her so she can give Emil shit for playing Candy Crush, and so then she ends up sitting next to Nolan, who pretty much admits to her that playing with her is the reason he came, being that he's also going to the tournament in Moscow, which is the actual big deal. He also tells her that Emil and Tanu used to be a couple but broke up when they both ended up at different schools, which to some degree hit home for her with Easton, who she haven't really talked to in a week. He also tells her that he's happy about never having to sit inside of a school again, but feels like his friends are going on to have different lives that he can't really understand, which also hits home for her. When they get there, they start their game and it goes really good for all of them, mostly Mal and Nolan, up until her last game against one of coach's douchebag friends, and when he's losing, he calls over one of the arbiters, who she immediately recognizes because she had caught her dad cheating with her. And feeling kinda sick, she offers to draw even though she wasn't cheating. She still felt like she couldn't go on with the game. And Nolan, who had finished his own game earlier and had walked over there in the midst of her panicking and kinda got worried and started asking her what had happened, but she refuses to answer and had gone back to the hotel and locked herself into her room. And when she woke up in the middle of the night, someone, obviously Nolan, had left her bag with food. They win the bronze, and for the last night there, they have a game night with pretty much everyone from the tournament. And late in the night, when everyone's leaving for pizza, she and Nolan are the only ones left and end up playing like 100 rounds of tic-tac-toe, when the winner gets to ask whatever question they want. And Nolan focuses his questions on why she quit chess and also trying to convince her that she's too good and loves the game too much to quit. And Mal, on the other hand, asks about what he meant when he said that he doesn't sleep around when Darcy had asked him, and he tells her that he never wanted to until now and had always been more interested in playing chess. And by the end, she'd had enough of him going on about her and chess and asks him what it is that he really wants from her. But before he can really answer her, Tanu and the rest of them gets back with the pizza. And so now fast forward again. After she gets back home, Ethan texts her about an article about her and Nolan dating, and so she goes over to Nolan's place to talk and try to fix this together. And when she gets there, he's very sick and instead she ends up taking care of him. They also get talking about his grandfather who played chess, and her mental illness too long for me to try and say, and ended up almost killing him, and that his dad pretty much blames chess for his grandfather's illness, and so was very much up his ass about not playing chess because that's what had led his grandfather to insanity, which is also kind of why he's estranged from his family. When she's about to leave, she tells him to call someone to come over and be with in case he falls down and dies. But when he tells her that there's pretty much no one that could come over, she decides to stay with him, but also very soon they fall asleep. And when she wakes up and tangled to each other, Daphne calls her saying that she's been chosen to play in the Challengers, But online people are pretty much saying that the only reason she's been chosen is because she's a woman, that they want to use her to get more women into the sport, or that they only did it because of Nolan. And when she asks Daphne wanting confirmation as to why they did choose her, she tells her that it is indeed because she's a woman and that they finally want to bring them into the sport where they had always been seen as less than by all the big ones. And when she asks Daphne about what she thinks regarding her chances to win, she tells her that she thinks that she could even win the championship, which is the biggest one. Now at the Challengers, she wins all her matches and makes it to a final against Coach. Though the day before, when she goes down to get something to eat, the other players are already sitting there, ask her a favor, which is to basically humiliate and kick her ass. She then starts talking with them for a short while, where they talk about how no one likes him or his douche friends. They also invite her to join their group chat. The subject of Nolan being there also comes up, which is odd to everyone because he had never gone to the Challengers before. Her match with Coach is very intense, but while she basically had him cornered, he out of nowhere pulls a move which basically amazes her because there's no way she can counter it. But it was also weird. The move he pulled wasn't his style, and like 2 seconds before that, he was circling the table sweating, and all of a sudden pull a move like that out of nowhere. When they're all sitting around a booth talking about what could have gone wrong, all of a sudden Nolan shows up, which surprises absolutely no one, and he asks the rest of them to leave so that the two of them can talk alone. He tells her that she shouldn't beat herself up because there really wasn't any way to have seen the last move coming, and he also asks her then to be one of his seconds, which means that now she's living with Tano, Emil and Nolan at his New York penthouse, and they're all gonna work together, which is going pretty nicely. Now fast forward again a bit, and it starts his birthday when she wants to go back for, and Nolan decides to go with her. Their visit goes pretty well, except for Sabrina, who seems to be pretty mad at her. Then on the ride back, he tells her that Darcy had asked him to teach her how to play, and he has shown her how each piece moves, but told Mal that she should teach it to her. And that somehow kind of leads into a huge argument during which it's now confirmed that her dad did cheat with Heather, and she had told her mom who had then kicked him out. And as sad as that is, it's a super excuse to have gone on about how all of this had been her fault, when those are two adults making their adult decisions. One decided to cheat and the other to kick him for it. So to turn that into how it's now her fault he's gone and how Darcy and Sabrina had grown up without him, which to me kind of just sounds stupid. And then he goes on to tell her what the deal with his grandfather was. Turns out that being 14, he had gone over with the president, but his grandfather's illness had led him to stab Nolan, and that's what had gotten him put in a mental hospital and put on tons of drugs, where he later died the one way he never wanted to. Their whole argument leads to them playing a game of chess when they get back. Not really sure how that would have helped, but being that it's what Nolan had wanted since the beginning, she kinda just wants him to leave her alone. But because she was mad at him and wasn't really thinking, she plays the game horribly and pretty much loses, but he apologizes in the middle of the game and they end up making up, and they also get together. Yay. Fast forward again sometime, everything going great for all of them, until one night when Daphne calls her and tells her that she's on her way to pick her up. He needs to return immediately because, let's be honest, shocking to absolutely no one, it turns out that Coach had indeed cheated. It is also revealed that Nolan had paid for her fellowship, and learning not only that, but also that everyone else had known about it, she ends up breaking up with him and then leaves when Daphne picks her up. She pretty much decides to ghost her job for some time, not wanting to go back, but after some time, Oz comes over and tells her exactly how much problem she is causing for Daphne, and right after he leaves, she gets in a huge fight with her family because of how ungrateful they are towards all the effort she's putting in for them, and goes into her room where her mom, who apparently had known this whole time what was going on, finally talks to her about her dad and what had happened hadn't been her fault, and how her dad had a history of cheating and alcohol abuse, and so no matter what, they couldn't have changed that, and the four of them hugs it out. Now on to part 3. Now time for a big match. She arrives to a hotel with her family, Daphne and Oz, and the whole time until midnight she spends training with Daphne and Oz, and past midnight when she finally can retire to her room, she sees no other than Instant waiting for her. And they talk it all out and realize that they had both had thought the other one's life had been better without them, and so they had started keeping a distance. And so now the plan is to spend the next morning together having fun and talking about everything. And when she gets back that night, she goes out to the glass house where they are set to playing the next day, and he's already dead looking up at the picture they have there of his grandfather, and they too end up talking things out as well and getting back together. And so now on to the epilogue. Fast forward again 2 years, and the epilogue is written in the form of an article written by Erin, the lady from the BBC who had been talking to Mal after a match and is no longer an intern. The article basically says how Mallory had won the championship against Nolan. It also talks about how even though they're not real public about their relationship, that she and Nolan are living together. It also mentions that it has now become cool over the years. The article then pretty much ends with how Nolan had won this year's challenges and that they're gonna play against each other again. And that, my friends, is the end of this video. Okay, bye.